The day my 10-year relationship ended, I was not crying or begging for another chance. I was standing in my kitchen stirring a pot of homemade soup when my boyfriend walked through the front door with a smile that felt strangely rehearsed, and before the soup had even finished cooking, he casually destroyed the future we had spent an entire decade building together. My name is Natalie Brooks, and I was 34 years old when I learned that love alone cannot save a relationship where only one person is carrying the weight. Looking back now, I realize the warning signs had been surrounding me for years, but when your heart is invested in someone, it becomes surprisingly easy to explain away the things that should have sent you running. I met Ryan Foster during my first year working as a financial analyst in Denver, where I had recently accepted a promotion after years of climbing the corporate ladder. Ryan was charming, funny, and the kind of man who could make complete strangers laugh within minutes of meeting him, and I convinced myself that his easygoing personality balanced out my organized lifestyle because opposites were supposed to attract. The first 3 years felt almost perfect because we both worked full-time, split our expenses fairly, and spent weekends dreaming about the house we wanted to buy someday. We talked about getting married, raising children, and growing old together, and I truly believed we were building a future side by side instead of realizing that, little by little, I was becoming the only one laying the foundation. Everything changed after Ryan quit his job, insisting that office life was crushing his creativity and that he wanted to launch his own business. I supported his decision without hesitation because I loved him deeply, and I honestly believed that helping the person you loved during a difficult season was simply what committed partners were supposed to do. A few months turned into an entire year, without any real progress, yet Ryan always had another explanation ready whenever I asked how his business plans were going. He spent more time watching motivational videos, talking about becoming successful, and imagining his future than actually taking steps to create it, while I quietly worked longer hours to keep every bill paid without making him feel guilty. Eventually I was paying the mortgage, utilities, groceries, insurance, streaming services, vacations, and even the monthly payments for the SUV Ryan drove every day. Whenever I gently suggested he might consider applying for a temporary job until his business became profitable, he accused me of doubting his dreams and reminded me that successful people often needed years before anyone believed in them. My closest friend, Lauren Mitchell, noticed the imbalance long before I was willing to admit it, and one afternoon over coffee she carefully asked whether Ryan had contributed anything financially during the past 2 years. I laughed awkwardly and defended him the way I always did, explaining that success took patience and that one day he would make all of our sacrifices worthwhile, even though a small voice inside me was beginning to wonder whether I was the only one still investing in our future. One Friday evening, Ryan came home unusually cheerful after spending the afternoon with several friends, and he barely looked at me before dropping his keys onto the kitchen counter. He took a slow breath, folded his arms, and with the calm expression of someone announcing tomorrow's weather, he said he thought we had grown apart and that it was finally time for him to move on and discover the life he truly deserved. For several long seconds, I could not process what I had just heard because the words felt too ordinary for something capable of destroying 10 years of memories. I stared at the man whose entire adult life I had supported with my love, my patience, and my paycheck, completely unaware that his shocking announcement was only the beginning of a story that would teach us both the true cost of taking someone's loyalty for granted. I stared at Ryan, waiting for him to laugh and admit it was some terrible joke, but his expression never changed as he calmly explained that he needed freedom to focus on himself. He said our relationship no longer made him happy and insisted that leaving was the best decision for both of us. Even though I had never seen any sign that he wanted to end things, I asked him if there was another woman, but he quickly denied it and claimed he simply wanted a different life than the one we had built together. His words stung because they completely ignored the years I had spent sacrificing my own dreams to make his life easier while expecting nothing more than loyalty in return. After taking a deep breath, I walked to the front door, unlocked it, and placed his travel bag beside the entrance without raising my voice or creating a dramatic scene. Ryan looked genuinely surprised when I calmly told him that if he had already decided to leave our relationship, then he could start his new life somewhere else that very night. His confidence disappeared almost instantly as he argued that he needed more time and suggested we could continue living together until he figured things out financially. I shook my head and reminded him that he had chosen independence, so it was time to experience what independence actually looked like. Ryan reluctantly packed a few clothes before leaving for his older brother's apartment, but not before accusing me of being cold and selfish after everything we had shared together. As the front door closed behind him, I realized I had lost the man I loved, but I had also taken the first step toward reclaiming the life I had nearly forgotten belonged to me. The next morning, I woke up expecting to feel completely broken, but instead I felt strangely peaceful as I drank my coffee in a quiet house that no longer carried constant tension. Rather than crying over what I had lost, I opened my laptop and started making a list of every bill, subscription, and account that was still connected to Ryan. By lunchtime, my phone rang, and seeing Ryan's name on the screen made my heart race for a brief second before I answered. Instead of apologizing, he casually asked how I was doing and said he hoped we could remain good friends because he did not want things to become messy between us. I calmly reminded him that friends do not pay each other's living expenses, then explained that I was removing him from my phone plan, canceling his access to my insurance policy, and closing our shared bank account by the end of the day. His voice immediately changed from relaxed to panicked as he asked how he was supposed to manage without those things. Ryan accused me of trying to ruin his life, insisting that I knew he was not financially ready to support himself after being out of work for so long. I quietly replied that he had chosen to walk away from our relationship, and with that choice came the responsibility of standing on his own feet for the first time in years. Before hanging up, he called me selfish and claimed I was punishing him simply because he had been honest about his feelings. I placed my phone on the table, smiled to myself, and realized that setting healthy boundaries felt nothing like revenge, because it finally felt like self-respect. 3 days later, Ryan texted me from his brother's phone, saying I was leaving him with nothing and asking how I could erase 10 years together so quickly. I read every word without replying because I finally understood that silence was more powerful than arguing with someone who refused to accept the consequences of his own choices. A week after the breakup, he called again to ask if he could keep driving the SUV since he needed transportation for job interviews. I reminded him that the vehicle was registered entirely in my name, and although I hoped he found a job soon, the SUV would be staying with me. A few days later, Ryan came to collect the rest of his belongings, and his older brother, Eric, came along because he believed I had been treating Ryan unfairly. Eric insisted that I should continue helping Ryan financially until he got back on his feet, but I calmly replied that my support ended the moment Ryan chose to end our relationship. While Ryan packed upstairs, I noticed he was carrying a suitcase that looked much heavier than it should have been, so I politely asked him to open it before leaving. The moment he unzipped the bag, I found my tablet, my expensive camera, several pieces of jewelry, and a watch my late grandfather had given me years earlier. Ryan immediately claimed he had packed everything by accident, but neither Eric nor I believed that explanation after seeing my personal belongings hidden beneath his clothes. I removed every item that belonged to me, handed him only what was truly his, and watched him walk out the front door, realizing that the man I once trusted had become someone I barely recognized. That evening, my best friend Lauren came over with takeout and a bottle of sparkling water, refusing to let me spend another night alone thinking about everything that had happened. After listening to the entire story, she looked at me and said Ryan was not heartbroken because he had lost me. He was heartbroken because he had lost the comfortable life I had been providing. Her words stayed with me long after she left because, deep down, I knew she was right. Ryan had never expected me to stop paying his bills, taking care of his responsibilities, or solving every problem that came his way. Over the next 2 weeks, I heard through mutual friends that Ryan was struggling to adjust to his new reality. His brother had already told him that he needed to find a job and start contributing to the household instead of spending every day making excuses. One evening, my phone rang again, from an unfamiliar number, and I immediately recognized Ryan's voice before he even said his name. He admitted he had applied for dozens of jobs without success, and quietly asked if I could lend him some money just until he got back on his feet. I closed my eyes for a moment before giving him my answer as calmly as possible. I told him I sincerely hoped he rebuilt his life, But this time he would have to do it on his own because I was finally choosing to invest in myself instead of someone who had walked away from me.